I didn't have the fear, the anxiety, the anger. One thing I did have was depression. Adjusting to this bachelor life at the age of 43, 44, when all my other friends are in marriages and have families, it was very lonely, very isolating.
Hey there, my name is Sean, and this is Suicide Noted. On this podcast, I talk with suicide attempt survivors and ideators so that we can hear their stories. Every year around the world, millions of people try to take their own lives, and we almost never talk about it. We certainly don't talk about it enough, and when we do talk about it, when we engage with people in pain, we're not very good at it. So one of my goals with this podcast, the first episode of 2026, more conversations and hopefully better conversations with survivors, in large part to help more people in more places feel a little less shitty and a little less alone. Now, if you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I'd love to talk with you. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. Also, if you'd like to share a part of your story, but you don't want to talk with me, you can email that to me, or you can leave an audio message. You can find that information in the show notes, speakpipe/suicide noted. And with your permission, I can also read that out on an episode. So give that some thought. I want to share a few more things about the coming year that I have in mind. That is, some of them are currently happening, some of them are goals. And as listeners, even if this is your first time or you are a loyal listener, I think it's important that you know we will continue to do our Monday episodes every single week. My goal is to reach people in new places, countries that I haven't spoken to somebody. But if you're out there and you've never seen your country on this podcast, and you can speak some English, and you can understand some English, you've got access to Wi-Fi, let's do it. You will also notice that on Thursdays and perhaps sometimes Fridays, you will see new update episodes or some other special episodes. I plan on continuing doing that. If you have some ideas around that and something you'd like to hear, something that might be of value to the listeners, please let me know. I definitely haven't thought of everything, and you might have some great ideas, so let me know about them, and perhaps I can include them in future episodes as well. Oh, and by the way, I think I shared with you on last week's episode that we will soon be in 26 countries with listeners all around the world, and that includes 6 continents. The one continent where I don't know if I have any listeners, I certainly know I don't have any guests, is Antarctica. Now, I know this is a long shot, but hey, if you're out there in Antarctica and you want to talk with me, shoot me an email. We'll figure out a time in which it's bearable and not too cold for you to do that. A few more things. I had been doing Monday polls on Spotify, and there has not been many people who responded to those polls. I don't know if that's going to change, but moving forward, I think every single Monday I'm going to be asking the same question. It will revolve around the pink and purple pill, in part because I want to write a book or some kind of book revolving around the pink and purple pill. I also am thinking about doing a solo show. Now, some of you might know that I have done a couple of solo shows around suicide. I won't get into all the details now. Happy to share if you're curious, but I have got a goal, whether it is here in Mexico or in the United States and or somewhere else, to do a new show. It will include some of those same elements around the pink and purple pill. And if you can let me know your thoughts on how you feel about that pill, I may be able to include it in some of that work. So, answer the poll, or leave me an audio on speakpipe.com/suicide noted. Again, that information is in the show notes, in the podcast description, the website. Of course, there is also text and WhatsApp and social media. So if you want to find a way, I'm sure you will. You can do it by email. Just let me know if I can use your name and or location. It is completely up to you. But also help me know, however you answer that question, why you answered it the way you answered it. I will be sharing more with you in the coming weeks and months about speaking. That includes my own as well as a small but growing network of suicide attempt survivors who I am helping shape their stories. If you're curious about that, reach out, as well as licensing this material. I'm telling you, it's real hard to try to monetize this. It has never been my goal, or it certainly wasn't my goal in the beginning. And at some point, simply because I wanted to do it more and more and have all of these ideas, and I'm not independently wealthy. I'm not married or partnered with somebody who's wealthy. I don't have a benefactor of sorts. So I'm trying to get creative in ways in which I can monetize this and also, of course, keep the integrity and not change it. I will not do that. So one of my ideas, and I think it's a good one, we will see if it gets validated and if people or organizations give a shit, is licensing some of this material done in certain ways so that they can have an additional usage rights for research or education or training or wherever it might go. So if you know anybody, and that's probably somebody who works at or is associated with a university who might have an interest, reach out to me. I will compensate you fairly for making an introduction if it leads to an agreement between me and this group of people or person at said institution. More on that soon. Feel free to reach out. One more thing I want to share. I was hesitant to do this, but in this work and speaking with suicide attempt survivors, there are people I have spoken with, probably more than I know, who are no longer with us. And I can only say a couple of names that I know for sure are gone. They did die by suicide, 2 of them in 2025. Sherry in Washington, Craig in North Carolina. I don't know exactly what to say other than I'm really glad I got a chance to speak with you, and I'm really glad, honored that you trusted me, spoke with me, let me share it with the world. Presumably this information, your story, that conversation will live on through this podcast for a long time. I hope that you feel okay about your decision to do that. I know it didn't come lightly. I know for sure because I spoke at length with both of you, and this was something that you wanted to do, and you did it, and I honor that, and I honor you. So thanks again. That's all I've got for now, other than, of course, we are talking about suicide on this podcast. My guests and I do not hold back, so please take that into account before you listen or as you listen, but I do hope you listen, because there is so much to learn. Today I am talking with Chris. Chris lives in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, of course, and he is a near suicide attempt survivor. Hey, Chris, in Massachusetts. And you reached out, it was something around the event. We did not meet at the event in Gardner.
No, I didn't get a chance to, unfortunately.
It was a good event. Nice town. Always enjoy driving through New England. I reread your email, and you have a podcast, if I'm not mistaken, on music. Is that right?
Yeah. We feature musicians, local musicians all around New England area that we interview and have them perform live on the show.
Not this podcast. There's no performing. I did just get off the phone with somebody on a call with somebody in Michigan who's a rapper, or at least has a rap song, and he rapped for me. So if you want to drop something at some point, up to you. I'm curious because I don't think this came up. How did you actually find information about the event, the tour event?
I saw a posting by the Gardner News that shared your event. It really struck a chord with me. I read the article and what your event was stood for, and they had mentioned your podcast. And I was like, oh, wow, that's a really awesome, podcast. I wonder if they would be interested in my story.
By they, you mean me. It's just the one person. And of course he is.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Gardner News, thank you to the Gardner News, because I think you are the one and only publication that decided to cover it. So you have, Chris, an attempt?
I came very close. I had an insulin needle pressed up against my arm, and not just any regular insulin. It was U500 insulin, so it's about the strongest insulin you can get. And
you had access to that because of a condition?
Type 2 diabetic.
Oh, so you're using medication used to keep you alive?
Yeah.
In literature, we might call that irony.
Right. Yeah, definitely a lot of irony there. Right. Yeah, I had that pressed up against my arm. With all that I was facing, I didn't really see a way out, and it was just a last second decision to not go through with it.
Yeah. What do you think stopped you?
Well, whether it was my own voice or some other voice, it just told me, if you're willing to die now, why don't you wait until you see how things play out? And if they go as bad as you think they're going to go, then you can go through with it.
When was that?
This all happened about 3 years ago.
And so given that you probably would have shared that you've tried since when we first started talking about it, because you said it was the one time, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worked out, but it presumably didn't get worse.
The situation got worse, but in the end, it turned out really well. I definitely didn't expect anything that ended up happening after that in a good way. Like when I was in that moment, I couldn't see anything good happening after that.
Right.
And quite the opposite actually happened. So
we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Did I even thank you for joining me?
I'm just thank you for allowing me to share my story.
For sure. Why did you want to talk with me? And, because it's a podcast, as you know, you have your podcast. Others hear it.
Yeah. So I've always been like an open book. I've always shared my struggles, especially from that moment on. And what I found was that there were a lot of people, especially men, who went through similar situations and kept it to themselves. And they told me that they really appreciated me being so open with my story, that it helped give them inspiration. And the more I started talking about it, the more I started talking with other people about their struggles and even their current struggles.
Like where are these conversations happening typically?
Geez, everywhere. In the podcast interviews, they happened just hanging out with friends. They happen on the job. I've met quite a few people in quite a few different areas who are all silently suffering.
Oh man, they're out there. So many, so many. I get why you're here and I appreciate it. I have a little bit of an idea. I know the way, the method, if you will. I like that we sort of created some breadcrumbs here. You're like, now I need to know all kinds of ways I can frame this. How old are you?
So I'm 44.
How does that feel when you say that number?
I guess I'm still young, but it feels like a lifetime. I mean, it should.
And then, so you were 40, 41 when this happened?
Yeah, 41 when everything just kind of fell apart, yeah.
I don't know how often you've talked about this. It sounds like sometimes. There's probably, you could probably take 10 hours to talk about from birth to 40. We don't have 10 hours. Just give us an idea of how you got to that point.
I grew up with a single mom, lived that way for all my life. When I finally got through college, I wanted to start my own family, and that was my goal. Ended up meeting my soon-to-be wife. We had a daughter. I went to college, got the career right at college, and I was living the American dream. I had a home, a family, and a career, and thought everything was happy. When COVID came around, that's when things really changed in our family dynamic.
That's a good long while, 15 plus years, if my math is correct, at least, where you were dreaming the dream, living the dream.
Yeah.
Wife, home up in Massachusetts?
Right.
And how many kids?
Just a daughter.
Okay.
And we had a cat.
One's good. Yeah, daughter, cat.
Things weren't perfect in our relationship that, were exposed when COVID happened, but I was still oblivious to what was going to happen. So, COVID happened and lockdown happened, just like, and it affected a lot of other families differently, I felt like. But ours in particular, we had a daughter that was just full of fun, bubbly personality. She was a social butterfly. And then COVID happened, school shut down, and she became recluse. She kind of shuts off in a room, and she wasn't really herself. She became full of anxiety, which was new to us. She had never suffered from anxiety before. And it put a strain on our relationship and our family. After a while, my wife was visibly upset. It really affected her. And I was trying everything I could to do to fix it. And the more that I fixed the situation, the worse it got. That's when the arguments started happening with my wife and I, and the stress and the frustration. What had been, I thought, was a loving family turned into this weird situationship where all three of us are kind of like just roommates in this house. That went on for at least a year and a half until things really dissolved. I felt my wife had really disconnected from the marriage, that she really had pulled away. And I knew it. Like, even though I didn't know it, my heart told me that that's what was happening. So I really just, I got frustrated. I felt like I needed to fix it. There were things that she was telling me that she wanted she wanted a new kitchen, she wanted a new bathroom. These were the things that she was saying that was, part of her getting upset. And so I ended up leaving my job of 20 years. I ended up getting a new career as a director of marketing. It was going to pay a lot more. So that was great. But leaving a job that I worked for 20 years, and then this new job didn't have health insurance. So I swapped over to her health insurance. And I said, well, if I work this job and I make this money, I can save this marriage because the money will give the things that she wants that'll make her happy and we'll all be happy again. But that didn't happen. A few weeks into the new job, we went to our annual camp trip. We came back home. We were stressed, tired. We were unpacking. I was staging all the heavy stuff. I said, hey, don't worry about this stuff. I'll take care of it. You bring in the small stuff. I go to the car, grab something, get back to the basement, and there she is carrying my bike down. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. And she just lets it go. So I go and I try to grab it, and I missed it, and I got jabbed in an open wound on my leg. It hurt. I got upset. I went ahead and I put the bike down. There was an empty laundry basket in front of me, and I just threw it because I was like upset, and that's when she started yelling. She said, "I hate you. You're so mean. I don't want to be married anymore." And then that's when my daughter came up to the bulkhead at the basement. She said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, he threw a laundry basket at me." And that's when she called 911.
Oh, I had a feeling this was what was going. So do you think any or all of that was a setup?
It feels that way. But regardless, in that moment, I should have known better. I should have done better, responded better. Regardless of whether it was a setup or not, I should have known better to not throw in anything. I should have just walked away, cooled off, and then come back into it. I was suffering from pain from the leg. At that point, when I heard my daughter talking on the phone with 911, I decided to run. I ran out of the backyard, and I was heading to my car. Again, I had a voice that said, Chris, you're only going to make this worse if you get in that car and drive away. And so I stopped myself. I threw the keys in the front seat, closed the car door, and just walked down and sat down on the steps. The cops came. They took her side of the story, took my side of the story, and said, Chris, you don't have any previous criminal record, but we're going to have to place you under arrest.
For what?
So the charge was assault and battery with a deadly weapon, which was the laundry basket.
Chris, can I say something? You could have made the same claim. A bike is more dangerous than a laundry basket, my friend.
It's funny that you mentioned that because when they took the evidence, they took photos of the injury on my leg.
Right.
But there was no photos of any injury on my wife. She didn't go to the doctor.
I don't know the law, but if someone attacks me, I'm going to fucking attack back. Sorry, I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but it's an understandable thing to a point. Sorry, I'm not trying to, man. So did you get convicted?
Well, so I was facing 10 years in federal prison with up to $6,000 in fine.
Sorry. I just want to understand this because it almost sounds made up.
I know it does.
You were facing 10 years in federal prison for throwing a laundry basket.
Yeah, they called it assault and battery with the deadly weapon.
Your wife who had thrown a bike at you. I actually rarely get so surprised on this podcast that I don't have much. I cannot believe what you're telling me. But people tell me all the time about their suicide attempts. I don't blink an eye.
Yeah, my lawyer even laughed at it. He said, maybe if it was filled with dirty laundry, sure, but I was like, yeah, but they were so tough about it. The DA really kept pushing it. They wouldn't, reduce the charge. They wouldn't do anything. I had to go back 3 times, and on the 3rd time, we got the Worcester DA, and he said, "Listen, we'll downgrade it to a misdemeanor, but you got to do 20 sessions of anger management, and you're on probation for a year."
You got to take that deal, right?
Yeah. So, there was conflicting witness statements between my daughter and my wife. We felt like we could have gotten the whole thing thrown out, but we would have had to put my daughter on the stand to cross-examine her. And I didn't want to put her through that, so I just took the plea bargain.
And more importantly here, I think, well, not more, but the reason why I was hesitant, and then I did get quite animated about it, what's also happening is you're losing your family.
Yeah, right. I knew at that point nothing was going to be the same. I spent 6 hours sleeping on a concrete slab. They gave me a blanket, but it was like the insulation that you would use for your car flooring, and I was in there for 6 hours listening to other inmates screaming obscenities and just yeah, it was in an environment that I had never been in before, never experienced,
Hmm.
and it was scary. When they released me that morning, they gave me a no abuse order. There was no restraining order, so it said I could return back home, but I didn't want to go back home because I was afraid that if I did and she made a false claim that I'm harassing her or whatever.
You're fucked. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up
Massachusetts
for
would
the
give you the fucking death penalty apparently for that. Jeez.
yeah, yeah. It was like an instant 90 days in jail, and a guilty plea on the charge. So I said, well, I'll live in my car. So for the next month, that's what I did. I was living in my car.
Wait,
Uh,
Chris, why didn't you get like a cheap hotel or something?
I didn't really have the funds. Yeah, it was tough. My new employer had found out they were renovating a house on a property, and they're like, "Well, maybe you could stay at that property while we're renovating it." But eventually, my wife moved back in with her father. I was able to, go back into my house, and at that point, we had, started talking about what was going to happen. She was going to let me keep the house, but then talked to her friends and they convinced her to sell the house. There I was. My daughter was living with her, the house I was staying in, but, I was going to have to sell it. So, I was facing this jail time. I was facing all this horribleness. And then on top of it, she ended up being laid off from her job afterwards. So then she lost her health insurance, which
Uh-huh.
then I lost my health insurance. And because of the child support that they were talking about and me having to buy my own health insurance, I was going to walk away with $400 a week working, a 60-hour job, salary job. And I'm like, I can't live off of that. And then on top of that, I was, also a dedicated church member at my wife's church. Our
Hmm.
pastor had tried to help us out, did a really poor job. After all that happened, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, Chris, I think it would be a bit in the best interest for you to stop attending church."
It's like literally just lost all this stuff in a short period of time.
Yeah, it was within a month and a half.
If I were to talk to you then, like you're a very calm guy. You could be faking it, but you just have this like calm vibe. Nobody says that about me. Just so like it matters. Like no one would
Yeah,
be like, Sean, you have a calm vibe. I don't. So even then were you like Mr. Chill?
yeah, I like being laid back. I've had a very traumatic childhood, and I've learned to really just relax in times of trouble. It's not easy, and up to this point, it was really I couldn't relax. Like I couldn't be chill. I was having an absolute breakdown through all of this. And what's crazy too, while I did go to church, I was one of those clock in, clock out guys. On a Sunday, I went to church because my wife went to church. And then after the church went ahead and asked me not to go anymore, like I lost all my faith. That was like the last bit I was holding on to when I was going through all that. Here I am in this house, empty. I'm going into like the kitchen. I'm like, oh, that's where we would celebrate my daughter's birthdays, thinking all these memories in the past that were never going to happen again. As a result, I started praying. What's crazy is that a year before this all happened, I had a really vivid dream that I woke up and my family was gone. I looked everywhere for them. I was crying, and then I woke up. I had tears running down my face. I went and opened up my daughter's room, and there she was sleeping. I was like, "Oh, thank God, it's a dream."
Hmm.
And then a year later, it actually ended up happening. I found myself in that situation. So I started praying. And this was the main reason why I started praying was that, God, give me a sign that everything's going to be okay. And I did that for weeks and I didn't have any dreams, at least for the first week. I did have a dream. It was a brief dream, but it was like just a replay of every moment of every argument that I've ever had with my wife. And I remember waking up just feeling like a piece of garbage. I just felt horrible, but I kept praying. I kept praying. I said, God, just give me a sign that everything's going to be okay. Nothing, nothing. And I dream a lot. Like it's really weird for
So
me not to have any dreams.
wait, so you're
Um,
saying that the sign from God would have been in a dream while you were sleeping?
yeah, that's what I was asking for. Yeah, I was asking for him to give me another dream again, just give me a little glimpse of the future that everything's going to be okay.
Oh, Chris,
Uh,
this feels like really scary though, because if you usually dream and you don't dream, to me, I'd be like, that's the sign. And you could easily interpret that as, there's nothing.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what was going through my head. Like, wow. Because up until that point, I wasn't a religious man. I said, I've made so many mistakes in my life, but the one thing that I've been able to do is keep my vow and with my marriage with my wife. And as long as I was good there, I was good with God. So when that fell apart and then church kicked me out and then I'm praying and get nothing, I'm like, why am I still alive? Like, why am I still doing what I'm doing? I really didn't think there was any way out of it, and it wasn't until it must have been at least 2 weeks of just this praying and just nothing. And I woke up one morning and I was angry. I was so angry.
Good. I'm waiting for this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I was upset. I was like, God, why have you abandoned me? Where are you? Like, I just need you to tell me that everything's going to be okay. And I yelled it. I was angry. And that's when the phone rang. So I was still working for this farm as the director of marketing, and we were putting together a festival, and it was a vendor. She said, "Hey, is this Chris?" And I said, "Yeah, this is Chris." She's like, "Yeah, I'm calling about the festival, but before we get into it, I just want to let you know that God put it on my heart to let you know that everything's going to be okay."
Stop. Come on now.
I kid you not. I mean, God, honest truth, strike me down dead if any of this is made up. But that is literally what happened. I paused because I was like, I was beside myself. I was like, and I said to her, I told her, I'm like, hey, this is what just happened, and this is the prayer that I just prayed, and you just told me. And
Hmm.
she stopped me and she said, "Do you have goosebumps? Because I have goosebumps." I'm like, "Yeah, I have goosebumps." And she made it a point to tell me that she wasn't going to tell me, that the Holy Spirit put it on her heart to tell me. But she's like, "I don't know this person. That sounds ridiculous. Like, I'm going to sound like a crazy person." And so she had made up in her mind when she called me not to say anything. And it wasn't just until a very last second decision to tell me. And it was at that point that everything changed. All my anxiety, all of my fear, all of my anger, just gone.
Here's the cynic in me. Ready? Like, but
Yeah,
your
yeah, sure.
wife's still gone. Your kid isn't around much. The home, that's still hard, no?
Oh, 100%. Right. But for me, I had always lived this life where I always questioned
Yeah.
whether or not, God was real. And now I just had this happen. And I was like, wow, God is real. And he just told me everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, I have no idea how everything's going to be okay. I don't know how I'm going to get through this charge. I'm not, I'm going to have to find a new job. I'm going to be homeless at the end of the year because I have to sell the house. But God just told me that everything's going to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this is
yeah,
no. I'm not doubting it, and I'm not questioning you. I think it's fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
The weirdest thing popped into my head. He called you for a business reason. Were you able, after this massive thing with the goosebumps, get to business? Because that's why she
Yeah,
called.
yeah, she did. She has some questions about her vendor spot.
God is
Yeah,
gonna dot 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 dot. You get but da. By the way, is vendor spot 324 still open for me and my team? Like, is that what you're
yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah. It was crazy. I mean, it took us a little bit to get there. Yeah, but at the end, that's why she was calling to see where she's going to put her tent down.
One of the better conversations of your life, I'm sure.
Yeah, it saved my life. That was the first moment that I realized that somebody else's decision to say something to somebody could make such a dramatic impact.
Must have been an
Yeah.
interesting moment.
Because she didn't come off as a religious person to me. She was
Yeah.
more like an artsy.
Now, where did the suicide or near attempt come in? At what point before this, I assume?
It was before this, yeah. Right before I started praying, that's when I had the needle pressed up. I mean, I had that pen fully cocked, like I was ready to go.
So, couple of questions around that. Was it just that happened to be the moment or the hour or the day after all the, just it's mounting, it's more and more and more? I mean, was there anything particularly about that day that had to be the day, or was it just nah?
Yeah, it was right after I had gone back into the house. Back in the house, everything was still there. Even the majority of my wife's stuff was still there, but they weren't. My wife wasn't there. My daughter wasn't there. Being in that house by myself, it was eerily quiet. They even took the cat. So, but even, like I said, just going into the kitchen, seeing the dining room table where we had celebrated birthday parties, going back into the living room, remembering of all the Christmas and Thanksgiving parties, celebrations that we've had, knowing that it was never going to happen again. I couldn't even sleep in the bedroom, because that was a lot of memory. So I was just sleeping on the couch. Even after all that, again, I didn't know how things were gonna play out, but I knew I had to leave my job because, again, between the child support they were gonna, charge me, buying the health insurance, I couldn't do it. So I didn't even give a notice. I just resigned. I resigned from my position, and I hated to do it because they were a great family who owned it. They didn't deserve that. It was really my dream job, and that I had to walk away from. There I was, without a job. I was stretching a dollar. I had one credit card left that had a $2,000 credit limit, and so I was buying pizza slices from Cumberland Farms, and that's what I was eating. Whatever money we had went away quickly. I had to pay $4,000 for somebody to come out and clean up the house, and so we threw away all my stuff. I lost 20 years worth of belongings, including sentimental stuff. I was panicking. I didn't know where I could store it. I didn't know where I was going to go, so I just let it go. And my mother at the time lived in assisted living, and my father had 6 people living in a 2-bedroom trailer home, 40-year-old trailer home. I didn't really have anywhere to go. Again, God had told me that everything would be okay, and so at that point, I just trusted that everything was going to be okay. And a lot has happened. So at that point, the trial went on, and they downgraded it to a misdemeanor, and I did my anger management.
Chris, if you need anger management,
Yeah.
well, I don't know what the fuck I need.
Yeah, actually, it was funny because as the other people in the anger management class, they told me the same thing. They're like, "What are you doing here?" But I actually did pick up some good lessons from it. Seeing what other people had gone through, I heard some other stories from other men that were going through divorce. I got it way worse than I did. Yeah, it was a reflection moment going through that. I did a lot of looking inwards, but realizing too, as bad as I thought it was, there were instances of it where it could be worse. And so, I went through that. I applied for jobs. I wasn't getting anything. Like I was dropping applications everywhere. Nobody was getting back to me. I went to a temp agency. I'm about a month away from losing the house, and I applied to this job, this factory job. I prayed and I said, God, give me a job. Let me work. Like, just help me. I said, God, if you give me a job, I swear I will fall down on my knees and cry. And I felt a voice come over me and said, go take a walk out in the forest. And so we have this bike trail. So I drove out there and I started walking, and the phone signal was really bad, but it was early in the morning. Nice sunny day. I get out to this clearing. There's this like little stone bench. I'm just sitting there listening to the birds, check my phone. Of course, no phone signal. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. I get up, walk a little farther, and then I'm like, I'm going to walk back towards the car. So I'm walking back towards the car, and then my phone rings, and it's the temp agency that said, hey, Chris, that interview that you did? They like to hire you, and they want you to come in on Monday. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's incredible. Finally, something good it's happened, without even thinking about it. I got off the phone and I just fell to my knees and I started crying. And I stopped myself and I'm like, wow, I'm doing the thing that I promised that I would do. Literally was not thinking about that. And I just started thanking God, and I got to the car, got home, did some laundry because I hadn't been doing laundry. I want to make sure I was presentable on my first day of work. And that's just one of the first many things that ended up turning around for me. I started working at that job. I lived with my dad for a month after I let go of the house. He let me live. I slept on the couch. My sister was in the process of moving back in, so I knew I could only be there temporary. After a month, I packed into the car again. I was going to live in the car, and my friend reached out and said, Chris, I know what's going on. I don't want you to go live in your car, especially during the winter. Why don't you stay with me? He has this small 1-bedroom apartment in Leominster. And so, I started living with him, paid him $100 a week, it worked out well because I was only making $400 a week from this job. And at that time, I was like, you know what, maybe I should go back to church again. Maybe I should find a church.
Given everything you shared about all the changes, I would think. Well, though you could certainly have a strong faith in God and not want it, not connected to a church. Some people.
Right. It was weird because I like after going through what I went through with my wife's church, I didn't want to just throw myself at another church and experience the same thing again. I did try a few other churches before this point, but like I think the first church I went to it was in Gardner, and like this was after we separated and I moved back into the house. The church I went to, the very first sermon, the pastor went up and started talking about how him and his wife just celebrated his wedding anniversary on a yacht out on the Cape Cod, and I was like, okay, this isn't for me. And I was really turned off by that. There was these two churches on the main drive in Leominster that I'd always drive by, and I'm like, it'd be kind of neat just to check it out again. But I don't know if there's a dress code. Like, I don't have that many clothes. I threw away almost all my clothes when I lost all the stuff at the house. Definitely didn't have any church clothes. I didn't pursue it. And so I was going to Market Basket to buy myself some food. I came back out and I was approached by some evangelists. They came up to me and said, "Hey, do you believe in Jesus?" I said, "Yeah." Like, "Do you have a church?" I said, "No." And they said, tell us about yourself. I told them about, going through a divorce, and that's where they stopped me. And they said, "Hey, well, we have a group called Divorce Care." I'm like, "A church have divorce care?" Like, usually those are the things that churches, look down on, I said, "Okay." So I started going to divorce care, and I started meeting other people that were going through it. And again, I felt, inspired to share my testimony, my story with people who hadn't experienced such a good turnaround like I did. And then I started going to church there. And ironically enough, because life is full of irony, the name of the church is New Life Church. That's what I got, was a new life.
Yeah. Did you keep that job or you got another job now?
I lived with my best friend for about 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
Thing about best friends, we've known each other, since grade school, but it's a whole different matter when you live with them. We weren't getting along with each other, and it was a really tough time for me because here I am. I'm not good enough for my wife. I'm not good enough for my family. I'm living with my friend, and now who I consider my best friend, and now I'm not good enough for my best friend. And so I felt like a real failure. And I said, you know what? I don't want this to ruin our friendship. I'm just going to move out and figure it out. And again, I didn't have a place to go. My other friend and her husband, who is a photographer, and I'm a photographer, she hired me to be a second photographer at this wedding job. And she heard about what was going on. And she, after the end of the wedding, her and her husband came over and said, "Hey, listen, we heard what happened. We don't want you living in your car. We have a 4-bedroom house and 2 bedrooms aren't being used. Move in with us. We won't charge you anything. You can get back on your feet." And I said, "That's amazing." I said, "Thank you." And I only lived with them for 2 months. But in those 2 months, they showed me so much care and love. It really showed me another side. And I was like, wow, maybe I am capable of love. Maybe I'm not a piece of garbage. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the turning point. And then unfortunately, they had a situation because her ex-husband and her had 50-50 custody of their daughter. Even though the daughter was on the other side of the house, whatever, the ex-husband found out that I was staying there. So he's like, "Hey, I'm going to take my ex-wife back to court and ask for full child support and custody because they have a stranger living in the house." And we're like, "Stranger? Like we've known each other for 30 years, And so again, I said, "You know what? I don't want to put you through that." They said, "Chris, it's okay. You don't, like, we're just letting you know what's happening. You don't have to move out right now. But we'll have to start figuring something out." And I said, "Listen, I'm going to make it really easy for you guys. I'm going to just move myself out and take myself out of the equation because, I care about you guys so much. You guys have been so nice to me and so good to me. I don't want to put any of this in danger." And so again, I didn't have a place to go. I called my pastor while I was at work, told him what was going on. And I just said, "Hey, I just need prayers." And the pastor said, "Okay, we're going to pray." And we prayed for a place for me to live, and then that was it. I got off the phone. Now, at that point, I had put out a post that said, "Hey, looking for a new place." I said, I'm probably gonna just stay in my car until I can find a new place. So if anybody has a place, let me know." But after that prayer phone call, it was no more than 5 minutes. I got a message from an acquaintance And she said, "Hey, I have $1,000. I'm going to give it to you. I want you to find a motel. You're not going to stay in your car." And then it was about another 5 minutes after that, a friend reached out and said, "Hey, my mother would like to meet with you. She has an apartment." And so I, arranged to go see her. At the same time, I had applied for this random photography job. I figured there's no way I'll get it, but it's a photography job, and I've been doing photography, for the last 15 years. Why not? Let's sign up for it. And I got an interview, but I didn't know if I was going to get that job. Anyways, that Friday, I went to go meet with the landlady. We talked about God, ironically enough, for an hour. And then she handed me the keys. She said, "Here's the keys. You got the apartment." And then I got a call later that afternoon. It says, "Chris, congratulations. We're going to hire you as our full-time photographer and IT manager." And it was a salary that could afford to pay for the apartment.
Where was this place?
The job. So it was up in Keene, New Hampshire. I had been working at this factory job. It was Space Age Electronics. That was the job I got through the temp agency.
Right.
But again, it was only paying $20 an hour. At the time when I found out that I was going to be homeless again, I'm like, I need to apply for places. I need to find something that I can live off of. And that's when I found this photography/IT job. And that Friday, they called and they're like, "Congratulations." And I say, "Oh." And so that weekend, with the little stuff I had, I moved into my apartment, and I had a new job I was starting that Monday.
And how long ago was that?
2 years as of November 6th.
I know you start a podcast at some point. I'm wondering your relationship with your daughter, if you talk to your wife. There might be other stuff in the last 2 years, but just for the sake of time.
Yeah, so we've stayed civil after that. My wife was gracious enough to waive her rights to my retirement, agreed onto a smaller child support payment, still quite a bit, but that's fine. I was happy just to be able to support my daughter, so I didn't really care what the cost was, as long as I could just afford to support myself.
Is that part of the deal? Do you get to see your daughter?
Well, so she's 20. She's going to be 21 in December. So she was 17 when this all happened.
Oh, I was picturing a little younger. Okay.
Yeah, no, we had her young. My daughter and I, we talk every week. We visit like on the birthdays. I mean, she's busy because she's going to college right now full time to be a teacher. And I couldn't be more proud. She's supposed to be finishing up her sophomore year, but she's a junior because accelerated learning, and she still maintains a 4.0 GPA.
Damn. All right.
Yeah. So I'm really proud. But she's really hustling, working hard. So right now we don't get to see each other as much, but we definitely make a point to talk every week, and it's a very loving relationship that we have between each other. And then my wife and I, we're civil now. We text and we talk mainly about our daughter, and that's about it. She's moved on. I struggle with that. While, I didn't have the fear, the anxiety, the anger, one thing I did have was depression. Adjusting to this bachelor life at the age of 43, 44, when all my other friends are in marriages and have families, it was very lonely, very isolating. And I had to kind of navigate that and learn to adjust to this new setting. But after a while, it became peaceful. And that's when I realized all of the toxicities of my former life, all the things that didn't serve me well. I sacrificed my own happiness to try to make others happy. And so when I realized that, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start creating borders for myself. I'm going to boundaries, and I'm going to start just respecting myself and respecting my time. And now I'm at peace. I'm at peace with everything. And I can tell you with 100% sincerity, I could not have seen any of this when I had that needle pressed up against my arm. I would have never guessed. I would have never had a guess any of this would have happened.
Either way, did you choose that as a possible method just because that's what was available?
That's what I had available. There was a part of me that was afraid to do it. My mom had attempted suicide quite a few times in her life. At one point, she slit her wrist, but she didn't die from it. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do anything that's super painful. And something that I could then still survive from.
You had
Yeah.
said something about a traumatic childhood. The reason I bring that up, I'm wondering, up until this point, a few years ago, with the needle in your arm, had you ever thought about suicide?
Yeah, there were a few times. I had suffered a nervous breakdown in high school. They put me on a lot of medication. I was a skinny kid all the way up until that point, and I gained like 80 pounds while I was in this mental hospital for 2 months. When I came out of that, I really struggled a lot, and I had a pill box I kept full of Thorazine. It was like 2,000 milligram tabs, which is I guess it's like a tranquilizer. And I said, if it ever gets to too much, I'm just gonna take this whole box of pills.
So this wasn't your first out of nowhere. Like,
No, it was,
mom has tried.
and she actually almost succeeded. After I had moved out, she spent most of her life on disability because she had lupus, but she was also diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. That's what I lived with for my whole childhood. And so it was difficult. And then my father, who was in and out of my life, my mom didn't always want him around and he suffered from bipolar. I didn't have a stable family life. Yeah, that was, I'm like, you know what? I want to have my own stable family, and I don't want my child to have to grow up in that environment. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that my child grows up in a normal home.
I have a weird question, Chris. If your wife doesn't do what your wife does, whatever that ends up looking like, just you fight it, you go to couples therapy, whatever. Like, and I could have told you, you're going to be together with her. You're going to work it out. It's not going to be the same as it was, but it's going to be manageable for your lives, your daughter. Would you have said yes to that?
In that moment, I would have,
Right.
100%. That's how committed I was. I look back at it now, and I'm glad that it happened because it taught me so much. And it's so weird for me to say that, but it gave me so much perspective. Losing all my stuff that I had worked 20 years accumulating made me realize how finite things are. Out of everything, losing all that stuff was like a weight off my shoulders. What have I been working all my life to carry debt on? But then also, what did I say yes to just so that I could have a family? What kind of relationship was I forcing to happen when I should have walked away from it from the first sign? When we were dating, we had a little mini fallout, and she ended up hooking up with my best friend. Thought I was my best friend. I got mad at the friend. I got mad at her. He claimed that it wasn't happening, and I believed him because I've known him my whole life. And I thought she was crazy. And I said, "Don't ever contact me." Blah blah blah. And she said, "No, it's true." Blah blah blah. She sent me an email just explaining it all. I sent that to my friend. He replied back. He said, "No, she's making it all up. She's crazy. She's this, that, blah blah blah." And so I just forwarded his email to her, and it broke her heart. She didn't realize that I guess she thought that he really loved her. And so after that, she wanted to get back together. I should have said no. I should have walked away.
So you're saying this even before you ever got married?
Before I got married, yeah. I felt bad. I really wanted a family. And I said, okay, I forgive you.
Did you?
I thought I did. And I'm like, oh, I forgive her. Not because I forgive her, but because from a religious standpoint, I should forgive her. I heard somebody say on a clip, it says, how do you know you've forgiven someone when you can talk to them like nothing ever happened?
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm like, wow, I'm not there yet. I do forgive her now because, my life before I didn't have God. I was content with my family life. I was content with my career. I felt like I didn't need God. And now I know I need God. I know God's the center of my whole healing. And so if everything, I have God in my life now. And so while she may have done what she did, I still have this life redeemed because of it. So I'm very, grateful for that. And she's still my daughter's mother.
Right.
And she always will be.
Does your God, what would your God perhaps say about suicide?
That's a good question. So there are religions, there are preachers, pastors that say suicide is a sin. Suicide is your rejection of the life that God has given you. But I don't feel that way. And the reason I say that is because I was in a point where I didn't feel worthy of being saved. If I had been God, I would not have saved myself. I'm like,
Okay.
this kid's a lost cause. And out of all that, God still chose to save me in the way that he did. And so my real first encounter with God was one of love, just
Mhm.
pure love. I so wholehearted believe that God loves us so deeply that even those who end up taking their lives, there's still a path for redemption. There's still a path for those, for God to understand where that person was and why they did what they did, for
Mhm.
there to still be compassion and empathy, and a lot of people don't see it that way, and I think that's a part of why people, struggle with suicide. They think that that's the end of the chapter for that person, and then that's it. Through my experience with God, I don't see it that way. I don't believe it to be that way. I've had friends that have committed suicide. I've seen the impact it's had on myself, on their family, and it lasts for forever. And I think about going through what I went through and now knowing where I am now, and I think about where they ended their lives, whereas if they had kept going where their lives would be, I'm sure if they were still with us, they would go, "You know what? I should have stuck around." But I think too at the same time that God says, "Child, I understand why you were where you were. I understand your pain, your sorrow, and all the weight of the world that was upon you." So I don't necessarily think suicide is, your excommunication from heaven. There are far worse things to be kept out of heaven for.
You're pretty open about this these days. That said, how many people know about that day a few years ago?
Quite a few. I've been inspired to maybe create some content, write a book. I
Mhm.
definitely want to write a book.
Hang on, Chris. Do you have a title yet?
Everything's going to be okay.
That's your title.
That's my title.
Are you married to it?
I have.
Okay, does it have a subtitle? This is important to me.
I think it needs a subtitle.
It might. Okay, it might. Memoir aside. So more people will know.
More people will know. What was interesting is that, I've told a few people about, especially the phone call part, and I've had such crazy reactions. I had one gentleman was like, "You know what, Chris? I was on the fence about God, but that right there that's incredible." Everybody that I've told this to, they've had a similar reaction to yours, and they're like, "Wow." I don't know. I don't hear about those kind of things happening. Like, you read in the Bible and you're like, "Oh, God split the sea or whatever." Where's the proof these days? Where are the miracles now? So for it to happen on such a personal level, for a while there, I had survivor's guilt. Like, I was like, why me? Like, why do I deserve to be saved? Like,
Mm.
why do I, get to have a second chance? And it wasn't until I started telling people about what I went through that I started seeing their reactions. I started hearing stories about what they went through. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe it's not about me.
Mhm.
Maybe it's about helping others through my experiences.
Do you live in a new place or the same place?
Same place, same apartment. Yeah. Things are different now with one income. I'm working full time with my main job. I am doing a photography business on the side. I also do DJ and I have the podcast.
What's the name of the podcast again?
Yeah, so it's the Musical Chairs in Massachusetts. Yeah.
Chairs in Massachusetts. If you don't know how to spell Massachusetts, just Google it.
The at handle is at Musical Chairs Mass.
Perfect. How many people do you have to talk to if you're having a really shitty day and even talk about wanting to end your life? I realize you wouldn't be doing that probably these days, but who could handle it? Who would you feel okay doing that with?
Yeah, I talked to God about it.
What about people? Any sentient beings?
No sentient beings.
Got it. Did you ever get a diagnosis from anyone at any time about mental health stuff?
Yeah, so when I had that nervous breakdown back in high school, they diagnosed me as being bipolar.
Oh, back then. Do you think that's correct?
Way back. No, because I was so defiant. They put me on medication,
Mhm.
and they said, "You're going to have to take this medication for the rest of your life." And knowing how my
Right.
dad was, I didn't want that for me. So I said, "No, I'm going to not stop taking this medication. I'm going to figure this out on my own and learn how to cope with it." They said, "Chris, you're going to relapse
Yeah.
within the next year." A year went by. I was fine. They said, "Chris, you're going to relapse by year 2." They always relapse at year 2. Year 2 went by. I was fine. And then they were like, maybe we misdiagnosed you. Yeah.
You must have mentioned in more recent years depression. So I don't know if that was a capital D or a small D type.
Yeah. So the depression was after everything the dust had settled. But there's so many things to be happy for, and I've learned to be happy with so little. Tomorrow's not promised.
Nope.
My job's not promised. My health's not promised. Even this apartment, like, there's just so many things that could just fall apart.
You lived it, right?
Yeah.
You lived it.
I just know, again, everything's gonna be okay, and
everything's going to be okay. Of course you think that because it's the name of your book. Also, if you've lived it, you've experienced something so deep and profound. For people who haven't, there's probably going to be an impasse. It's just the truth. Do you think this word impulsive is a tricky one? Because do you think that night when you tried to end your life or came that close, however you define the word impulsive or frame that, was that impulsive or no?
it was to a certain degree. I didn't see a way out. I really just wanted to clock out. I had my neighbor trying to tell me, hey, I've been through 3 divorces, there's life after divorce, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but not like me though. Like, I'm facing homelessness and the charges, and this is like worse than your worst country song.
And also telling people the reasons they should live is rarely helpful. But what about this? And you've got something like, sure, go ahead. I hope that's not the only thing you're offering because they know. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a tricky one because somebody can appear as if it's impulsive or it might actually be the actual choice in that moment, but it could be 20 years in the making. So it's like, what do you do with that word? Is there one myth or misconception around anything you brought up today, particularly that didn't come up already, that you think is commonly misunderstood that you'd like to call bullshit on?
It was interesting in that moment of isolation. You quickly find out who your friends really are. You quickly find out, who comes to your rescue and who doesn't. You'll tell people, oh, yeah, you're fine, you're doing okay, but that's obviously a lie. The myth is that people really do think that people that are going through it, that tell them they're going to be okay, that they think they really are. The ones that just say, I know you're not doing okay. You want to talk about it? You want to just tell me what's going on? Those are the ones that mean the most because it gives you an opportunity to let it out. And that's really what you want to do. And it's so hard in a society these days, especially as men. We're supposed to be, men. We're supposed to keep it to ourselves. Suck it up. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't show your vulnerability. Just figure it out. That's the most dangerous thing you can tell a person, because now that person's feeling like, I can't figure it out. That must mean that's it for me. How the people react around you and expect you to handle the depression and suicidal thoughts, that needs to change.
Yeah. Do you think you'll get married again?
No. I'm finding I love people, and it's kind of weird, a weird 180. Like I went from loving my wife but hating people. Like I was really just afraid of people. And now I'm like the absolute opposite. Like I love people. I care about people. I don't hate my wife, but like I hate the concept of getting into another marriage. Whether or not a marriage is in my future, great. I would really have to, I would need another sign to say, hey, this one's okay.
Well, you got to ask for it. That's how it works, I think.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
My last question, it's a doozy, and then whatever else you want to add, of course, I want to hear. I have this question I ask called the pink and purple pill question. Basically, if you take it, you die. You go to sleep, there's no pain, you don't wake up, and nobody knows it's a suicide. So if you want out, this is the perfect way to do it. I offer this pill to you the same moment in which you have the syringe pressed up against you. I'm going to give you that pill. So you can put the syringe down. Here's a pill. I'm going to also give that pill to you today, right now as we speak. 7:06 p.m. So what do you do? Let's start with today. What would you do with it?
Oh, man, I would put that down in the garbage disposal. Gone.
Don't save it.
Not even in temptation.
What about then?
Man, that probably would have been even more tempting than the insulin.
Because there's no pain, and I'm guaranteeing it's going to work. So instead of taking away all the things that some get in the way, it's the real question of do you want to live or not?
If it was in front of me and I didn't hear that voice, I think I would have taken it, and I think I would have probably felt a little bit of regret, maybe. Well, after, and then just waiting for it to.
Okay, well, we could create a mechanism within it where it happens right away, if that's what you prefer.
Okay.
But yeah, there was some time
Yeah.
and missed. You'd have a little, might regret. Okay. maybe.
Because that's kind of what I thought about with the insulin. I'm like,
Right.
how long is that going to take? Like, am I just going to fall asleep?
You can't undo it.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know if that would have been painless, right?
I assumed it was like you just go into a coma. I was like, you know what? This is probably the least painful way of doing it, was what was going through my mind.
What else do you want to add? This is a good talk.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing this. One good thing, or there's a lot of good things that have happened since then, but the very last thing was I felt compelled through my church. They were looking for Stephen ministers.
You a minister now?
Yes.
Shut up.
It was what really pulled me to this ministry was that like it's a one-on-one ministry, and for where women minister to women, men minister to men. You don't try to fix a person, rather you walk alongside them and give them encouragement. And I was like, wow. I'm like, if I had that person in my moment, would it have made a more dramatic change in my life before it got to where it got? And so I said, you know what, I really wanted to learn how to be this kind of person. And it was intense. It was 50 hours of training, and then so now I'm part of it. As you know, men don't really come forward with issues, so the women are more ministered than the men. But I'm hoping that my story and other stories like it encourage other men to come forward and talk about their struggles, and I can give them my testimony and just be an ear for them.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I appreciate this.
I feel like you should have this podcast. Like, I'm too weird and edgy for it, but it still works.
Yeah. I'm just really appreciative. Like I've told this story to individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I've told this story to like a room full of men, but I've never, put out there on a big platform. I felt, I didn't feel, but like God was putting on my heart for me to get it out there. He's like, this is the moment, and this is, your story is going to go out there and impact people.
Is it weird when you say it? Like when you think about Chris 5-10 years ago, when you think God said, or God told me, or God, like that's not probably how you talked then.
No, had you told me that, I'm like, well, he's crazy. Like he's off his rocker.
Right, like, yeah, well, that's certainly not my thing, but you sure go do you.
And here I am. It's crazy.
And I bet it doesn't matter. And if somebody like you were 5-10 years ago were to look at you now and say, oh, he's crazy, like, I don't think you'd care.
No. I mean, if I cared, I wouldn't be doing the podcast. Like, I don't. What's important to me is that people hear my story and know that they don't have to end their lives.
Well, I appreciate you joining me here today, Chris. I really do.
And keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
All right, man. Have a nice evening, Chris.
You too. Take care.
As always, thanks so much for listening and all of your support. And special thanks to Chris in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth. Thank you, Chris. If you are a suicide attempt survivor or ideator and you'd like to talk, I would love to talk with you. Please reach out. hello@suicidenoted.com. And as part of an experiment of sorts on Spotify polls, my Monday original episode poll question will be the same every single week for an indefinite number of weeks. I would love for you to participate. Check it out. If you have a moment, rate and or review this podcast on Apple. All of these things help people find it. Of course, I want more people to find it if they need to find it and hear these kinds of things, like today's conversation with Chris. That is all for this week's episode. Stay strong. Do the best you can. I will talk to you soon.